We meet again, folks. Today I would like to talk about psychology, big pharma, and how they interlock, and why it's all just a giant scam. So psychology doesn't work for men, basically. Just get that out of the way. Like, psychology is something for women. It's just basically validation. It's just talking. It's not really going to improve your life or do anything. And if so, you either didn't have real problems or you're like just mentally weak. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, talking about your issues does not work for men because, generally speaking, if a man has a problem, there is only one solution: that's actually doing something about it. The world doesn't afford men easy options and easy outs for all of their issues like it does for women. So for women, it's mostly just describing what the problem is and then taking the free handout to solve it. That's really not the thing for men. So it's a scam for half the population, and the other half of the population really doesn't need it. They're just looking for validation for their mental issues. I have social anxiety. I don't like talking to people sometimes, dude. I'm totes an introvert. That's why I can't work. XD. That's a woman on psychology, right? Everyone's seen the BPD tatted slore, and her excuses and how she feels. Like, that's nothing new. That's the same BS it's always been. So that it is what it is. But oh no, you can't say that. I'm done caring about YouTube's guidelines or whatever. The channel will get eventually banned when someone reviews it anyways. So I'm just gonna have fun until that point. But yeah, so psychology is a scam. It only works for women, and it's, that would be not that harmful, right? It could just be as bad as astrology, as, all the other, like, random talky, mumbo-jumbo, hijinks type shenanigans that women enjoy, right? Who cares? Like, obviously women don't make the majority of money, but they spend the majority of money on things like this. So it is what it is, but that's not the harmful part. The harmful part is when you combine psychology with big pharmaceutical industries and then monetizing human suffering and then using it. They're basically making a problem and then selling you the cure, and that's what the entire industry is based off of, right? So, for instance, when we're talking about the drugging of children, I would compare ADHD almost to, hormone treatment. It's on that level of bad for me. Like, I never had to experience any of this. I'm an old man, so I didn't go through any of the horrors that I'm sure modern youth have to go through, like being, diagnosed as being a young man, basically, and that's problematic. So we need to drug you so that your 30-year-old obese kindergarten teacher doesn't have to walk, more than 1 mile an hour to keep up with you. That's where the problems come in. It's when you're, destroying children, genetically modifying them, as you will, but not really, but obviously, like, modifying their hormones, destroying who they really are, and limiting their ability to be physical. That's when you really start to rub me at least the wrong way. And it's solely based on laziness. Like, if you're a teacher or you're in the educational field, your job is to deal with hyperactive brats. You signed up for it, you deal with it, There's nothing wrong with a child just being a child. There is something wrong with, like, filling them full of Ritalin and God knows what else, so they're easier for the obese lard whale of a teacher to have to deal with. And teachers are almost exclusively female. It's a very female-dominated industry, and we really need some equity there, and we need to start firing female teachers and just getting them out. Like, you can't have that much of one gender being anything, right? It's just wrong. But of course that'll never happen. Anyways, but yeah, so, like, just imagine all the lives and all the, like, potential athletes, potential, like, physically fit people that, that follow this track in life, where they're, like, a kindergartner, like a 6-year-old that's running, jumping, climbing trees, like 6-year-old, someone that's standard and normal, and then they get to kindergarten or whatever, and Betty like, waffle tits can't bother to keep up with, some spry young child, and then so she calls the, local drug police to forcefully throw that kid on God knows what, just so he's easier to deal with. And then the end result is, of course, the destruction of his ability to be able to be motivated and, do a lot of things with his life. And then that, degenerate slore has basically ruined that child's life at that point, which, let's be clear here, that's what Ritalin does to these kids. you've ever seen a kid on Ritalin or these kids on the ADHD meds or what they do, they're like hyper focused, hyper just, staring at the wall types. And it's almost like a lobotomy that they're giving these people. It's absolutely degenerate. Like, I can't stand it. And I just would never want to, like, if you cared about your child, you could never do something like that to them. Like, take a flourishing, like, active youth and then drug them, and then is it any wonder that they end up being, like, obese and, like, like a Burger King flipper? Like, talk about a way to kill a person's soul, which is basically what Ritalin is and what all of this is. But that's what the, psychology and the, schooling industry in and of itself is, really. It's just an apparatus to try and kill young men's souls. And it is what it is. Like, the majority of, I'm sure, the Ritalin people prescribed with it are young men, probably, and they're, young men being active, running, jumping, climbing trees, doing what young boys are supposed to do. And yet, we live in a world where that's not acceptable, where it's perfectly alright to do these things to these children. Like, I would put this on the same level as, like, mutilation through hormone treatment. It was the precursor to it, honestly, and not enough people stood up to it, and it's not too late to stand up to it, I don't think, just like all the other social ills, but I don't think it's ever going to happen, right? Because the majority of voting bloc are these, they're that Karen, like, obese, sweaty narcissist that can't keep up with little Timmy. They can't outrun a freaking 5-year-old, so it's the world's problem, and it's a sad fate. So that doesn't even cover, like, the other wonderful elements and what the pharmacists do to the adults that go to psychiatry, right? Like, all of these psychoactive drugs and all of these things. Like, who really knows what the impacts and what they're doing are going to do to people in the long term? Like, that is so far beyond us to understand and possibly comprehend what's actually going to happen. It is kind of mind-boggling where this could go as in the future, but at the end of the day, it's just degenerate. Like, the entire thing is just sad. I don't know really why people assume that this is acceptable, where, like, there's a reason a lot of the people, if you ever talk to them, are, like, afraid of the medications and, like, shying away from them, because it's, like, brain-altering chemicals. And yeah, there are some people that realistically are not going to be able to live because of their mental illness, but those people, don't need psychiatry and don't need a psychiatrist. They need to be at a place where they can be, protected from themselves for the rest of their life, where they can try and enjoy as happy as a life as can be afforded to them. Like, these drugs don't work. We don't know what they do, really. Like, no one ever has. It's not scientific as far as what's related to this, and a lot of it is probably placebo and who knows what other effects. At the end of the day, it's a giant scam that, exists mainly to milk women out of money. Like, that's what the psychology industry is. It's meant to murder their children, basically, their child's ambitions and their hopes and dreams. It's meant to drug them into a stupor where they won't be able to function besides, pushing papers for Dr. Goldstein. And that's the reality of what all this is. That's the entire goal. And it's an absolutely filthy thing, and it's a horrible thing, but that is most of what medicine is. Like, I haven't been to a doctor in over a decade. I'm going to be real with you guys. Like, the last time I went to a doctor was when I needed to get my vaccinations for university. And those were real vaccines, by the way, not honk vaccines. And I could actually feel, like, when I got my tuberculosis vaccine, like, my skin had a little, like, yellow breakout from it around where it happened, right? I could tell this is actually inoculating me against, like, tuberculosis, because there's a little tiny bit of it that my body fights back and now has the antibodies to fight it, right? That's the way it works. You could literally feel and see it working as compared to, like, this new vaccine, total vaccine death or whatever. It's just absolutely hilarious. I might make a separate video on the honkening, but I'm still not sure if we're allowed to talk about that on YouTube, and I've already said the N-word on the channel, but, we'll have to see how things go. But yeah, I'm afraid if I'll set off filters or something and get the AI robot to analyze the channel or send it to a human being or whatever. So that's the primary reason why I haven't, but we'll see. And yeah, but that's my thoughts on psychology. It's a horrible practice filled with horrible people, and it's basically just trying to rob, like, stupid white women of their money. And I'm not against robbing white women of their money, I'm just against the greater societal ills that it involves. So you have a good day, though. Peace.